At what point does tradition become an excuse for cruelty? And would you realize it before it's your turn? In 1948, a writer named Shirley Jackson sent a short story titled The Lottery to the New Yorker magazine. And just days after the magazine published the story, it received dozens of hate letters from readers. These letters included statements such as, "I will never buy this magazine again. Quit writing immediately. You owe me an apology, and I have lost my faith in literature." The story was even banned in some parts of Africa. The New Yorker had never before faced such an intense wave of backlash for any story. And what makes this even more interesting is that the story itself was only about 10 pages long. Despite being so short, I can't remember the last time I was affected this deeply by a story. Trust me, it will affect you too. So let me tell you this short story properly from the very beginning, and then we'll try to analyze it together. Our story begins in a small town with a population of about 300 people. The weather is sunny and clear. Most importantly, the date is June 27th, the day on which the townspeople will repeat a tradition they have maintained for centuries. The lottery drawing. The villagers begin to gather in the town square, young and old alike. Interestingly, the children start piling up stones in the square, carefully choosing ones that are large and smooth. Although the people appear cheerful and friendly, there is an uneasiness they cannot completely hide. Eventually, the entire town is gathered in the square. At that moment, Mr. Summers, the man in charge of running the lottery that year, arrives carrying a black box. This black box is the one used for the lottery drawing. It is so old that it is older than anyone in the town. The tradition itself is essentially a drawing. First, as many slips of paper as there are participants are placed into the black box, and one of these slips has been marked in advance. The lottery consists of 2 rounds. In this town, each family has a representative, and in the first round, a drawing is held among these representatives. The representative who draws the marked slip advances to the second round along with their family. In the second and final round, that representative participates in another drawing together with the members of their family. And the true winner of the lottery is determined by the result of this round in the first round. The family representatives are usually the father figures of the households, though depending on the situation, other family members may also serve as representatives. For example, while taking attendance, Mr. Summers, who is running the drawing, notices that Mr. Dummer, one of the family representatives, is absent. Mrs. Dummer explains that her husband has broken his leg and that she will therefore act as the family's representative. Similarly, since the Watson family has lost its father, their son Jack participates in the lottery as the Watsons' representative. The townspeople even approve of this and say things like, "Well done, Jack, you're a real man, taking part on behalf of your mother." Everyone is ready for the lottery to begin, everyone except one person, Tessie Hutchinson. Tessie rushes into the square at the last minute. She has forgotten that today is a special day, June 27th, and that the lottery is taking place. Despite being late, she does not miss the chance to make a joke. When Mr. Summers asks why she is late, she replies, "I was washing the dishes." And the townspeople begin to laugh. Let's talk a little about Tessie's character. Tessie Hutchinson is the mother of the Hutchinson family. She has a husband named Bill Hutchinson and 4 children to daughters and 2 sons. One of Tessie's daughters is also married. Let's not forget this detail. As the representative of the Hutchinson family, Bill will take part in the first round of the lottery as the lottery is about to begin. Some women talk among themselves about how, in certain towns, the lottery tradition has already been abandoned. At that moment, an old man interrupts them, saying that young people today know nothing and that if the lottery tradition were abandoned, the village would be led to disaster. He even says proudly, "I've been taking part in the lottery for 77 years. He also repeats the saying, "The lottery in June. Corn will be heavy soon." We will return later to what the old man means by this remark. Before starting the lottery, Mr. Summers repeats the rules. The called representative will draw a slip of paper from the black box, but will not open it immediately. Once all participants have taken their slips, everyone will open them at the same time on his command. According to tradition, at the beginning of this lottery ritual, Summers was once required to give an opening speech and offer a formal greeting to those who came forward to draw from the box. Over time, however, these parts have gradually been removed from the ritual. Finally, the drawing begins. Tessie encourages her husband Bill to go to the black box. A representative from each family draws a slip of paper, and they are all opened at the same time. The result is clear. The marked slip is the one Bill has drawn. The Hutchinson family advances to the second round dot. At that moment, Tessie loses her composure. Just seconds earlier, she had been urging her husband to go to the box. But now she begins to protest the drawing. It wasn't fair. We need to do the drawing all over again, she says. She claims that Summers rushed her husband and that Bill therefore picked the marked slip in haste. Of course, these objections are not accepted. The women around her push back, telling Tessie not to be a sore loser and insisting that everyone had an equal chance. As Tessie argues with them, her husband steps in and tells her to be quiet. The Hutchinson family moves on to the second round. Tessie will participate together with Bill and their 3 children. But wait, earlier we said that Bill and Tessie have 4 children, and one of their daughters is married. This is where Tessie makes her final objection. She argues that her married daughter and her husband should also be included in the second round, meaning that the drawing should involve 7 people instead of 5. Summers rejects this proposal outright. The rules of the ritual are clear. Once a daughter is married, she becomes part of her husband's household and is no longer considered part of the Hutchinson family. Tessie has exhausted all her options. There is nothing more she can do. Tessie and Bill, together with their 3 children, take part in the second and final round of the lottery. One of these 5 participants will draw the marked slip and be declared the winner of the lottery. First, Tessie's youngest son, Davy, goes to the black box. Since Davy is very young and unaware of what is happening, an adult accompanies him. Next, their 12-year-old daughter, Nancy, goes to the box. At this moment, her friends sigh and hope that the lottery will not fall on Nancy after her. The older son goes, and finally Tessie and Bill step up to the black box. The entire family has completed the drawing. Now it is time to open the slips. The adult standing beside Davy opens the slip for the little boy, and when it turns out to be blank, a wave of relief passes through the town. The couple's remaining 2 children open their slips as well, and theirs are blank too. But Tessie hesitates and cannot bring herself to open hers. When Bill opens his slip and it also turns out to be blank, the winner of the lottery is already clear. Even then, Tessie cannot bring herself to open her slip. But even when the winner is known, the slip must be opened. Finally, her husband forcibly takes it from her hand and opens it. The slip Tessie has drawn as the marked. Summers says, "All right, everyone, let's get this over with," and the townspeople suddenly spring into action. Remember the large pile of stones the children stacked in the square at the beginning of the story? The villagers hurriedly grab those stones. One of them even presses a stone into the hand of Tessie's youngest son, Davy. Then the townspeople hurl the stones at Tessie with all their strength. Tessie begins screaming, "This isn't fair. This is wrong." But there is nothing to be done. This is simply how things are done here. Even as her bones are broken by the blows of hundreds of large stones, and her body is covered in blood, Tessie's final words do not change. This isn't fair. This is wrong. It is a terrifying story, strange and deeply unsettling in its own unique tone. Now that we have gone over the main outline, let's try to understand this disturbing story. Our first question, of course, is why? Why do the townspeople carry out such a brutal and seemingly meaningless tradition? The only reason they continue it is because it is a tradition. Those before us did it, so we do it too. They assume there must be some wisdom behind it. Not a single person in the village can actually explain the purpose or meaning of this ritual except, perhaps, the old man, who repeats the saying, "The lottery in June. Corn will be heavy in the air." Perhaps this lottery tradition was once a measure taken centuries ago against food shortages. Maybe it was a form of population control, killing one person each year in this small village. Or perhaps the townspeople believed, through superstition, that by offering a human sacrifice to a divine power, they would receive a more abundant harvest. The hard core at the center of a corn cob, and the phrase corn will be heavy in the ear, may symbolize extracting greater yield from crops. But this is only an interpretation. The story never tells us the true purpose of the tradition, and it does so deliberately. Because not only does no one in the village know why the tradition exists, they do not even wonder about it. No one ever asks, "Why are we doing this?" Children are naturally curious and tend to question every taboo. Yet in this story, even the children do not question the tradition. Instead, they compete with one another to collect the best stones. Just as when someone presses a stone into Tessie's son's hand, the tradition is passed down from adults to children as an inheritance. To the younger generation, it is presented especially as a matter of masculinity. Remember the Watson family. In the first round, Summers calls on Jack, the son, rather than Mr. Watson, as the family's representative because everyone knows what happened to Mr. Watson. Jack's father was the previous winner of the lottery, and as Jack steps forward on his father's behalf, the people around him say, "Well done. You're a real man." Look at how they encourage and push Jack forward. But now let's imagine the opposite. What if Jack had refused to take part in the lottery as his father's representative? Just think about how the crowd would have turned on him. They would have shouted things like, "You're a disgrace to your father. Your father didn't act like a coward the way you do." And they would have tried to lynch the boy on the spot. Now let's imagine Jack years later. As an old man, he would have become one of the strongest defenders of the tradition. After all, his father had died for the sake of this tradition. Could his father really have won the lottery for nothing? Thinking about Jack in his old age naturally brings us to the elderly character. In the story, the most irritating character by far. The reason he is such a fierce defender of the tradition is obvious. By his own account, he has been participating in the lottery for 77 years. He has probably lost friends, loved ones, his parents, and perhaps even his wife to this lottery. At this point in his life, could a man of such age accept that all those loved ones died for nothing? Of course not. The old man's anger and stubbornness can be explained by his long participation in the lottery. I've taken part in this tradition for 77 years. Others should endure it just as much as I have. Look at any tradition around you, its strongest defenders are almost always the elderly. As people grow older, it becomes increasingly difficult for them to question the beliefs they have carried throughout their lives. The townspeople have also removed some of the cultural elements of the tradition. In the earliest days of the ritual, the person in charge of the black box would deliver a formal speech and salute the participants. Those parts are no longer practiced. In the early days, wooden tokens were placed in the black box instead of slips of paper. Because preparing those wooden pieces took too much time, they eventually replaced them with paper. In doing so, they simply made the ritual easier. It is painfully clear that this is a tradition carried out without thought. Even if it is incomplete or stripped down, the priority is to do it quickly, practically, and be done with it. Remember what Mr. Summers said when Tessie won the lottery. "All right, everyone, let's get this over with." The townspeople have become so desensitized to the lottery that one woman in the square even remarks that time passes so quickly from one lottery to the next that it feels as if they held the drawing just last week. In light of all this, the black box in the story takes on a deeply symbolic meaning. Passed down through generations, it is a crude, patched-together object made from fragments of the original box from years ago. Dark, outdated, ugly yet still current. It is a box that everyone eventually has to deal with when the time comes. Alongside the black box, another carefully crafted metaphor in the story is the stone. First of all, the stone is one of the most critical objects in humanity's journey towards civilization. Humans shaped stone and built structures with it. But the same humans also shaped stone into weapons and used it to kill people. Through collective stoning, the stone is a symbol of both civilization and primitive barbarism. Another symbolic choice is the method of execution used in the lottery tradition, stoning. Why isn't the lottery winner killed quickly? Why isn't there, for example, an executioner who shoots the chosen person in the head? Why must the person be killed by being stoned by everyone? Because stoning is, by nature, a collective act. A person who takes part in the stoning does not say, "I killed Tessie," nor do they say, "We killed her." They say, "The stones killed her." Tessie is not killed by a single stone, but by hundreds of stones thrown by everyone. Unlike killing with a knife, your hands do not get covered in blood. You simply throw a stone. That's it. This distances you from the seriousness of your actions. As the number of attackers increases, it becomes unclear who the killer is, and responsibility diminishes. Now let's turn to Tessie's character. Tessie should not be seen as a progressive or anti-tradition figure, simply because she opposes the lottery at the end and says that everything is wrong. She is the last person who could be considered the good character of this story. The only reason we feel sorry for her is because we witness her being sacrificed. Until the moment she and her family are chosen, Tessie does not object at all. She jokes when she arrives at the square after washing the dishes. If another family had been chosen as the sacrifice, Tessie would never have shouted, "This isn't fair. This is wrong," like everyone else. She would have grabbed a large stone and hurled it at the lottery winner with all her strength. Tessie is a woman in her 50s and has probably participated in this lottery more than 40 times. After winning the first round, she tries to include her daughter and son-in-law in the second drawing, either to reduce her own chances of being chosen or perhaps to push the lottery onto a son-in-law she does not truly accept as part of her family. In any case, we know what would have happened if Tessie had opposed this tradition even before the lottery took place. In such a scenario, the townspeople would not even greet her. They would not sell her anything. Her entire family would be ostracized from the town and driven into ruin. Could the lottery be interpreted as a critique of democracy? If there had been a vote in this village on whether the lottery should continue, all the votes would certainly have favored keeping it. But the story is less a critique of democracy and more fundamentally a critique of conformity, of social compliance. My daughter, why did you write such a gloomy story? Especially at a time like this, why don't you write things that will cheer people up? Shirley Jackson's mother wrote exactly this to her about the lottery. I showed you some of the hate letters the story received at the beginning of the video. Some of the letters, however, were outright comical. Did you base this story on a real event? Where does such a tradition even exist? Some readers focus not on the point the author was making, but on whether this lottery tradition was real. Of course, no such historical event ever existed. The lottery ritual was entirely fictional. But look at traditions that are no different from it and that have survived to this day. Look at so-called honor killings, child brides, and crimes committed in the name of honor that still occur today. Lives destroyed for the sake of tradition for nothing at all are no different from this lottery. We submit to cruel traditions as long as they do not affect us personally. We do not resist until the moment those traditions choose us as their victims. The lottery of the traditions we endure, and when it finally falls on us, no matter how much we shout or protest, it will mean nothing in the face of people standing before us, stones in their hands, ready to lynch us at that point. None of what we say will matter anymore.